Welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who's come up with a green notebook system to get his life organised. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello.
Please explain.
Oh, it's just, I don't know. Like when we don't have the usual 9 to 5 job is where I'm starting with, obviously. Mm-hmm. So it tends to be like
it's in various segments of 16 hours.
Exactly. So our schedules are always kind of chaotic, and with that comes I have lots of stuff that I mean to do or want to get to.
Yeah.
And the one that really triggered this was walking into my house and realizing that the paint around our door has been peeling since when we bought the house 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And every 2 weeks or so I walk past, I'm like, you know what, this weekend is the weekend. And then I just completely forget until the next 2 weeks.
So what we're saying, you put that in the green book and it gets done?
It's more so than it's in there that I have a thing to look for. I was like, all right, this is my list of things I wanted to do. This is a list of things I need, blah, 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 blah. And included in that is a list of, say, shows we want to do or, TSS emails that need to be sent back. Lots of stuff.
Yes.
Lots of stuff.
All right.
Lists, baby. I'm about lists.
Lists. All right. Well, hopefully in there was answer some US men's national themed listener questions.
It wasn't until yesterday, then it was, and then after today it won't be anymore. That's how you do it. You cross them off the list.
Yes, there is a pleasure in crossing it off the list.
Oh, there certainly is.
So we put the call
Sometimes
out.
I make the list a little too easy so that it can be crossed off that much easier.
So we noticed we had some US national team questions already in our question bank, so I'm going to refer to it. And I kind of thought, why don't we just ask for more and we'll have like a really big themed show. That's what we've got going on today. There were questions from all over the spectrum of US national team interests.
And of course, because it's our listeners and us doing a question show, of course there's a question about a dog. Because why wouldn't there be?
Is. Not on today's show, though, because this is going to be
a part 1 and part 2?
It's going to be a two-parter.
All
right, to borrow a line.
That's the simpler way to put it.
To borrow a line from the old Shin Guardian blog, without further Freddie ado. Or was it Yanks Are Coming? They may both have done it. Let's get to some listener questions.
All right.
You want to go first? Or
I'll go first.
Yeah.
Andrew Moore asks, with players like Shaq Moore, Anthony Robertson, DeAndre Yedlin, and even George Bello on the rise, can we officially say our U.S. men's national team fullback problem is solved? If so, where is the next position deficiency?
I think the answer is no, right?
I agree.
Solved means that you've got Marcelo and Dani Carvajal.
I have written, and even then,
Real Madrid's fullback problem is solved.
And even then, I would say, I don't always love this mentality, but I think it's good when it comes to professional sports. Things can always be better. You can have a great right back, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't have a better right back who fits the system even better.
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't maybe kick the ball and chase after it.
Yeah, that'd be ideal.
So, it is. Mm-hmm. So, to Andrew's question, we are in a better place than we were when it was just like, who on earth is going to be our
Fabian
fullbacks,
Johnson?
Right? Yeah, when we were having people play out of position. And I think part of what's happened is we have had guys like, I think you mentioned George Bello, right? We've had guys like George Bello who have been identified as fullbacks early in their career, and they're playing there early in their career, right? And it's not Kellen Costa is a midfielder, but we'll try him at left back, or DeMarcus Beasley drop him back. So things are better, but they're not solved. Is that fair?
It is, because I would also say that if you ever see, especially with the national teams, I would say, if you ever see a position as solved, you're in trouble. Because we've talked about this with the women's team and goalkeepers. How if you just think, oh, we've got this number one, they're going to start every single time, that's the way it's going to be, you stop developing talent at that position. I think a lot of the problems that the U.S. national team faced in World Cup qualifying, we'll talk a lot about that today, comes about because maybe some players weren't being pushed the way they had been previously. So I would say, I would agree with you, we're in a much stronger position, but there is always room for growth, there's always room to be pushed to that next level.
And of course, there's like Anthony Robertson is playing in the championship, right? And we saw the mistake he made against Douglas Costa. Like he is really promising, exciting player that I'm all in on.
Yeah.
But there's still, room for him to improve as well. And then coming behind him, there's George Bello. On the other side, there's like Reggie Cannon and Shaq Moore, like getting a start in their career. I think the positive thing is just that there seems to be a production line of fullbacks to choose from. But the problem isn't solved until we've got fullbacks that we're 100% happy with.
Yeah, I feel like if your house was on fire and then the fire was put out and you've done a little bit of renovating to make it nicer, it's in a better position, is what we'll say.
Or if you buy a house and move in and you make some improvements and you're really happy with it, but maybe there's some painting you haven't done around the door.
Get a green notebook.
Get a green notebook. It's not solved until you've 100% done it.
But I take Andrew's point, which is that we're definitely in a stronger position than, I don't mean this to be as mean as it's about to sound, but whatever, is then when it was Fabian Johnson and Graham Zusi as our potential World Cup starters. That maybe wasn't as ideal.
Fair enough.
I would say in terms of his other question, where is the next deficiency? I would say it's in attack. That's the biggest one presently in my mind.
I would argue that it's attacking midfielder, just because creative midfielder, because we seem to have so many just basically box to box or number 6 or number 8 central midfielders, Costa, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, and more. But there seems to be a dearth of actual number 10 playmaker. I mean, this is a classic American problem, right? We could do a whole show just talking about this. But like, if you were to choose one right now, you'd say we could play Christian Pulisic out of position and play him centrally as a number 10. Or we could play Benny Feilhaber or Lee Win. Yeah. There's not an obvious choice, right?
Yeah, when you have a dearth, you get mauled. I would say that one made Daryl laugh. That one made him laugh. There we go. I'm speaking his language now.
There's no audio evidence of it. I did lean back grinning.
You did. Yeah. I think that's probably a good point, Daryl, because I was leaning more towards striker and like, we need another number 9. But I think part of the reason why I'm thinking that is because we haven't seen Josie Altidore in about a year.
Yeah, and there's Josh Sargent. Josh Sargent is on the earth. Bobby Wood is, I know people aren't thrilled about him, but I think Bobby Wood is still a fine choice at centre forward.
And Andrea Novakovic is doing big things. So I think with that said, you're right. Somebody to link that up and maybe be that consistent central creator, that is definitely an area where the United States could use some strengthening and probably has needed some strengthening for a good long while.
Yep. All right, should we keep this clicking along? Because there's lots of questions to get to. Up next is Dylan Quayler. Dylan wants to know, who would you prefer to wear the US men's national team captain's armband in the future? It's regularly been Will Trapp recently, which is true, but the Nantes highlights that Dylan has seen make him feel that it should be Matt Miazga. So I kind of love when people answer the question that they send in, or at least offer their own suggestion. So should we start with Miazga? Would he be a good choice in your opinion?
Sure. I mean, I guess so.
Yeah.
The reality is with a lot of these names, I think we don't know them well enough. I mean, if you're a Red Bulls fan who also happens to like Chelsea and French soccer, maybe you've been watching Matt Miazga a lot. That's possible. I've watched him somewhat.
What's the Venn diagram of New York Red Bulls, Chelsea, and Nantes?
Minimal.
and Vitesse Arnhem. The Chelsea
small circle.
The Chelsea Vitesse Arnhem has probably got some overlap. Right?
That probably makes sense. Yes. But I think with that in mind, I can't speak to like, does he have the qualities you want in a locker room? Is he respected enough? Are people going to follow him? Is he a uniter and not a divider? Does he take an all opinions matter approach? All of those things factor into it. I understand why you would want him because he's a strong center back who seems like he has a bright career ahead of him. I think you could make that argument, but there are other names I would say that could be in there too.
Could I settle on Matt Miazga just for a second? I do like the idea of Matt Miazga as captain because, one, we have seen him be very vocal in the back. He's a talker and a pointer. But that's a very English conception of a captain. You know what I mean? A shouty centre-back, an organiser centre-back. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that. But I think the better argument for Miazga as captain is that he could be our villain. He could be our guy that the rest of the world dislikes. You know, he's getting. Remember, we saw him in the Eredivisie last year getting grabby on the corner kicks. There was the incident with Diego Lainez, which we don't want to relitigate. But it could be that he becomes the player that everybody dislikes, but we love him because he's our captain. He could be our Rafa Marquez.
To quote MGK
just
recently.
Saying.
You're 5'8", I'm 6'4". How could I ever look up to you? Something like that. Yeah, that's Miazga when it comes to some of his conflicts with folks. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. But I think what it will come down to for me is the next manager, what they want the captain to be. I think that's usually what you have to look at. Is with Dave Sarachan, I think maybe he wanted it to be somebody who's calm, has been there before, is a figure within the locker room that people look to. I think that it is Will Trapp, at least with this iteration of the national team under Dave Sarachan.
I think that's a really interesting choice right now as well, because it also says that he's probably off the field and in the locker room is a really uniting character.
Yeah.
He's also a good age to captain this team, right? Because he's not a veteran who's associated with the failures of the past, but he's still got a few years on the likes of Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie, right? So he was, I think, a good choice right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But looking forward, I think there are two candidates.
Okay, who you got?
I've got Weston McKennie. I
think,
again, this is one who we don't know that much about, and I've definitely seen some stuff where it was like, he's very young. We'll put it that way when it comes to the way he interacts with folks.
I'm going to say he's fun.
Yes, but that's the thing, is like he seems like the one who's playing games. We talked about it with the Portugal camp, I believe it was, but then also with the January, just that he was bringing people in and it felt like making the practices a little bit more fun than they've been.
Yeah, he's more like the chief morale officer.
Yeah, he's a locker room guy. And then the other candidate for me is Christian Pulisic. I mean, I think that's the one that, if you go back to a lot of the articles discussing the USA's failure in World Cup qualifying in Trinidad, there's always that outlier of, and Christian Pulisic had almost single-handedly dragged the U.S. through qualification, and everybody looked to him, and everybody continues to look to him. And I do think there's an argument to be made that when there's this one player that really is sort of, at least when the Trinidad game, maybe it's a little more even now, but was head and shoulders above the rest of the team. I think that's a person you look to lead the team and carry the team.
I think that's a good argument, but for some reason there's some gut instinct in me that would worry if we made Christian Pulisic the captain.
Too much?
Maybe too much for him, because maybe just let him worry about running at defenders and making things happen like he does at Dortmund. And maybe also I think there's a danger of elevating your best player. Sort of sends a message that we're just going to make our most famous player the captain.
Yeah, and I think that's where, like, I don't.
You see it with like really small national teams who just have like one player that plays in the Premier League or the Championship, and they'll make him the captain.
I would say though that maybe that's you as the outsider saying that. Like if you're talking about like Ivory Coast with Didier Drogba, there's also an argument to be made that Didier Drogba is the natural leader in that national team, so it makes sense. So it really does come down to what is Pulisic's role within the locker room,
and does he want to do that?
And does he want to do that? I mean, there have been those articles about how committed is he. I'm sure he's very committed, but
I'm not even entertaining that.
Yeah, I think that maybe is part of it, though, is like you want a person who's going to be there, who wants to be representing the U.S. national team. Again, I'll say you can see his tattoo as evidence of how much he wants to be playing for America.
Yeah.
And that factors into it as well, just a little bit, just that like desire to be there.
The other angle on this is there are certain responsibilities come with being captain, which is you have to go and do the press conference and you have to be available for all these extra things, right? And I feel like we lean on Pulisic so much as a marketing tool, or US Soccer does as well. It seems unfair to me to just ask him to do even more off the field.
Yeah? That's okay. That's fair. So who are you going with?
I quite like the idea of Tyler Adams as a future captain. I feel like he hasn't been a captain that I'm aware of, because he's always been the youngest or one of the younger guys on the team. But you do see him talking to people throughout the game and advising people, and you see that like constant drive for self-improvement and always demanding more. I mean, I wouldn't make him US national team captain tomorrow, but I do think that maybe in 5 years he's a guy that could be wearing the armband. He just seems like the type of personality, right?
Okay.
What I would actually prefer is a more, which country does it, like Italian-style system.
Captain by committee?
Captain by committee, or more just like you. So, yeah, that's one option, but more just like the most experienced player on the roster is like the honorary. It's an honor to be captain, so you make that person the captain, right? So in this case, it would be, say if Josie Altidore is called back into the roster, given his number of caps, Josie Altidore's the captain. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And you could still have Matt Miazga yelling at people, Tyler Adams driving people on, Will Trapp pulling people together, and the captain just becomes like almost a ceremonial type thing.
Yeah, I guess I could see that too, because I still have the idea of you want your captain to be the one who's like the lieutenant commander or whatever it is, like the person who's right underneath the coach, helping kind of keep things moving, help things united, gets a read in the locker room to report back, and sort of becomes the almost like ambassador for the team.
And you're describing kind of Michael Bradley, right? And that system can calcify and then turn against you.
There's that. And so that is the downside to it, right? Is that, or if you have, I'm not saying he does, but if you have the wrong disposition, that can become, I am the most important player, I am undroppable, how dare anyone question me? And it can go that route too. Again, I'm not saying that's what happened with Bradley, but I'm saying that can happen if you get too much power. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, absolute power and whatnot.
So do we don't really have a consensus decision here,
no,
right?
I mean, I think I'm with you on the idea of, at the very least, of it being a more rotating thing than it's always this person who's always going to get called in. Because again, then to go back to the very first question, if you always have one player playing that same position every single time, then you stop having challengers at that one position. Yeah. And even if you do, if, say it were Christian Pulisic, say we make it Christian Pulisic, it's always going to be Christian Pulisic, but then another really great attacking player comes in, if he's the captain, you have run that issue of, well, now we kind of can't replace him. Yeah,
and we want to give Nick Tatagui the armband, but we just can't. All right, you ready for one more question?
I am.
Okay, Luke Carey wants to know... Oh, no, I forgot about this question.
Yep.
Luke Carey says, it's almost the 1 year anniversary of what we call...
I could not believe that.
The recent unpleasantness.
I for sure thought that was 2 years ago.
October 2017. Both of you worked very hard at analysing and discussing each game of the US men's national team's 2018 cycle. Thank you, Luke. In your professional opinion, when did things start to go wrong? Was there a game, a play, or a string of games, etc., that led to the Trinidad and Tobago results? Follow-up part to this. Also, with jobs and fandom so heavily invested in the US national team, can you describe your personal experience witnessing the USMNT collapse in TNT? Not the analysis, but the emotional journey throughout the game.
Yeah.
The second part is seared in my memory because we were right here in this room.
We were.
Right?
But I think with a lot of things, like your immediate feeling, and this is why we don't watch the games at bars or restaurants or around a lot of people. It's because the immediacy colors your perception after the fact. And I would say to some extent that's the case with both of these, that I think really, if I'm being totally honest, like when did I think things were going wrong is when we were 2-0 down to Trinidad. Like if I'm being totally honest, like
you assumed we were going to make it.
Or not even assumed. But
I turned up to just watch a walkover, probably a draw, we'll get to the World Cup. Like it was a formality.
Yeah.
Right?
Like I never.
Because it was that big Panama result a few days before. We destroyed Panama.
But I never thought, like going into it, that it was going to be like, oh yeah, we're not going to qualify. All of these things have lined up. And that's the way disasters work. It's like only after there's a few people maybe who saw it coming, and there's a few people who will claim they saw it coming. But I think generally speaking, it's when you look back, you start to see the cracks and the problems that were there all along that maybe facilitated some of the problems in Trinidad. And with that in mind, I do have one.
Hindsight is 20/20.
There we go.
Right? So so when was the moment?
Okay, it's a really strange one, and maybe I've just decided to be like, I don't know, hipster or contrarian, but I think it's strangely...
I think you decided that a long time ago.
That's probably true. Weirdly, it's when the whole drama about Klinsmann saying that players needed to challenge themselves in Europe occurred. I know that's a really random
When was
one.
that?
I don't know. Okay. Is my answer. I forget when. I didn't really go back and look at the specific timeline of that whole drama. But what I was realizing...
Was it around Dempsey's return to the league?
Probably. I think it was, and Bradley and Josie and that whole era. But it felt to me like what I was realizing in reading a bunch of different articles about what went wrong again, which, by the way, I would encourage everyone to do that, to just remind you of how bad things were. It really does make you remind you of like, oh, right, we can't go down that road again. And I realized that the reason why you say that if you're the head coach of a national team of we need players to go push themselves and challenge themselves, it's a veiled way of saying we're not good enough, that we don't have enough good players, and that we need – basically you can't say in the middle of a new cycle or when you've just signed a new contract, oh yeah, these guys aren't good enough, and you especially can't say that when you're a national team coach.
Yeah.
So you have to find the veiled ways to say that. But the reason why I think it's so revealing to me is because, as you and I have said many, many times, our frustration with Klinsmann is that he never articulated what was going wrong. Yeah. He could never say, this didn't really work or this tactical approach. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm realizing is basically what it came down to for him was, we're not winning, and I don't know why, so our players need to be better. I think that, to me, was the moment.
This has only just occurred to me that in hindsight, we all criticise Klinsmann as a tactician, and I still would happily. I'd do that for 2 hours with you right now if you like. But basically, he'd never been a part of or a coach of a team that wasn't going out there expecting to be the best, right? Yeah. The German national team goes out there expects to be the best, for example.
And there's a part of me, like maybe...
So it's like another skill set that you need to take lesser talented players and have them come together and compete against, possibly superior opposition.
Certainly that, but I would say it's even more so like just awareness. Like the awareness of... yeah, these guys aren't like these world-class players, so I've got to adjust my system. And you go back and look at see it again from the lens of him just assuming that he could put 11 players on the field, and if they were properly motivated, they would win.
Yeah.
And think about, we're going to be this progressive soccer, and we're going to pass, and we're going to have possession, we're going to be really attacking. It's going to be this new dawn of American soccer. And that's really easy to do if you think that soccer is just get everybody motivated, put the best 11 on the field, you're going to win. Mm-hmm. But if you see it from, oh no, this guy can't play as a fullback, he can only be a wingback. Or this guy can't be a wingback, he can only be a fullback because there are limitations in there. You can't just plug and play. And I don't think he was even at that level. I think it was, we'll put 2 midfielders in there, it'll be fine.
All right, so I did not expect that we would be talking about Klinsmann because I'm sure you are very aware that the US men's national team head coach at the time of the Trinidad game was Mr. Bruce Arena.
Yeah.
So I don't disagree with your take. I think that is maybe the beginning of where things weren't good for the US. I still think we could have qualified for the 2018 World Cup, right? Yeah. Not in impressive fashion, but we could have made it.
We certainly should have, yeah.
And I genuinely think...
And not should have because we're the best, but should have because we have the quality. Yeah. And if we were prepared, we would have.
So for me, the moment I would pinpoint is the US home game against Costa Rica at Red Bull Arena.
That's the one that always gets glossed over, by the way.
Where we lost 2-0, I believe, 2 Marco Reina goals, right? And the reason I pinpoint that is because prior to that game, things felt good, right? We had beaten Honduras heavily at home. We had beaten Trinidad at home. There was an away draw to Panama, which I remember us saying at the time, like, this is okay. Drawing away with Panama is okay. We'll just keep the points coming in. There was the away draw to Mexico with the Michael Bradley chip, right? So things were feeling okay. Then we won the Gold Cup. Things were sort of looking up. And then we hosted Costa Rica and lost 2-0.
Right.
I think that's the moment. That's when things started to spiral out of control.
And I don't want to hijack your point, but I want to connect the two because, again, this is what I was saying before, is that I think up until that game, you're right that we were probably like, okay, like things are fine. Like this is what you have to do is like win at home, get a point on the road. But as soon as you lose that Costa Rica game, I found myself.
Yeah,
I had this,
then the Panama draw looks a lot worse, right? Because
that's the thing, right? And like that's what I found myself doing with this. And it's I've been rewatching The Wire. You know this, so I apologize for being that guy.
So everything's connected,
of course.
Yeah.
Well, it's just more so. It's the thing with like the stats. Like if you're just looking to have good stats when it comes to crime versus actually deal with the crime,
and you move bodies into other counties.
And so exactly. But if you're just seeing it as like you win at home, you got a point on the road. That's what it takes to qualify. That is the very practical approach to CONCACAF qualification. But as soon as you lose one of those home games and you look at it again, it's like, wait, what? Like, no, we can go there and win. We can absolutely try to win. And if you win one and lose one, you still get one more point than drawing two. So it still feels like that. I guess what I'm trying to say is like it still feels like that weird. At the time, it was like, well, yeah, but it's okay. And then you sort of look at it again, and you're like, oh no, this could have been fundamentally different, but it wasn't.
And I would also argue that the reason that I think the really bad stuff starts there is it's an element of, you see, in hindsight again, you see Bruce Arena underestimating Costa Rica. Right? I believe we'd beaten them at the Gold Cup. Or was it the Copa America? I can't remember, excuse me. But we went to play Costa Rica at Red Bull Arena, and we went with a midfield. It was weirdly a flat four. It was Michael Bradley and Darlington Nagbe in central midfield. I think it was Pulisic and Fabian Johnson on the wings. And you see the beginnings of that thing where Michael Bradley is asked to be the lone defensive contributor. All respect to Darlington Nagbe. I still think he's a wonderful player, but he's the lone defensive presence in the entire midfield. And we got overrun. Right? I mean, that's not the only reason, but I think that's the beginning of where you see that, and you saw that against Trinidad as well. And I think we underestimated Trinidad. I think we underestimated Costa Rica, and I think that is part of the problem, and it started against Costa Rica.
It did, and the thing that started there, no, I appreciate rant complete. It's good. It was also the case that I think what we went back to, I think Matt Doyle did the same. I think the aforementioned Shin Guardian did the same of those first couple games under
He's
Arena.
He's working on a new podcast, by the way. He keeps hinting on Twitter.
I don't like it. Yeah, it's actually me and him.
Right?
I hate to break the news to you. No, it's not. But I remember those first games under Arena, and we were just like, look, there's a plan. Everybody knows the plan. Everybody knows the system we're playing. They know how to play it.
Yeah.
It's great. And I think that the Costa Rica...
Look how shiny the Gold Cup is.
It's wonderful. But then I think that Costa Rica loss, I think you're absolutely right. That's a key moment because not only was it just like, ooh, wait a minute. Like, we kind of don't know what's happening. That's not good. There wasn't really as much of a plan. Everybody didn't look as motivated.
Yeah.
But it was also when that same stuff came out of, well, why are we playing a home game in this stadium and we didn't have enough fans there and why is it? And it suddenly became, again, that like, oh, everybody's pointing a lot of fingers in a lot of places.
Do you know what else started there? There's the Jeff Cameron giveaway for the second goal when the US was chasing the game, because I think it was late on. That was the beginning of the Jeff Cameron Bruce Arena split, which has never fully been acknowledged, but we're pretty sure definitely happened, right?
Oh no, it's been acknowledged. There's that Ringer article.
Interview with Cameron.
There's the Cameron article. There's the Ringer interview where they talk about how Arena said like, oh, we were 1-3-1 with Cameron as a starting center back. That's not true. They were 2-1-2. But it's like, I think you're absolutely right that it was that giveaway that led to him saying there have been injury and consistency issues with Cameron, and that's when Cameron got really mad because he was not injured.
So there we go. Costa Rica, the beginning of the end.
Oh, boy.
That's my feeling.
Oh, boy. All right.
Costa
Rica and not knowing how to make players play soccer. Yes.
All right. Anything else to add on this?
I mean, I've got lots to say about U.S. qualifying, but we'll have more questions about it. So
we should keep unclipping through the questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, today's show is sponsored by SeatGeek, one of our returning favourites.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, SeatGeek, you do not get the new sponsor dance, but you do get the regular sponsor salute.
All right.
Thank you for sticking with us, and thank you to everybody who has downloaded the SeatGeek app and used it both to get themselves great tickets to live events and also just to support the Total Soccer Show. And often that Venn diagram overlaps almost completely.
Definitely does. Quick word of advice to Daryl Grove. When you're saluting, when you're done with the salute, take the hand down faster. Just throwing that out there.
Why's that?
Because, maybe just don't leave it pointing out like that.
Oh, did I do that?
A little bit.
Oh, I apologize.
A little bit.
That was very much unintentional. I also feel like I could have got away without you pointing that out.
I'm just saying. Person snaps a photo at the wrong moment. Suddenly there are questions about your discipline history, and when Douglas Costa spits on you.
Why was your phone in the air as well? Why was your phone in the air? All right, so I think to change the subject, what I'm going to say is that when you use the SeatGeek app, you can just, with a couple taps of your phone, you can buy or... See how smooth this is?
Yeah,
you can buy or sell tickets easily to any live event. Sporting events, concerts, music, comedy, all that good stuff.
Yes, I was very excited. My wife bought me tickets for a concert last weekend, but then we had former co-host Albert's wedding, so we were all set to try.
I love that that's his full name.
Former co-host Albert? Yeah, he legally changed it.
At the wedding ceremony, did they refer to him as, do you, former co-host Albert, take?
No, but the bride's father did insist on making jokes about Albert taking the bride's name, which I did enjoy. Yes, so we were going to use SeatGeek to try to put the tickets up, but then my wife's family wanted the tickets, so it all worked out in the end. But I was excited to use that feature because that's the one thing we haven't used it for.
Yeah.
The thing we have used it for on several occasions is buying tickets.
The way it works is it shows you the stadium where you're going, which you find the event, and then there's a color-coded system which tells you this is a good price for this ticket or this is a bad price for this ticket, which is the thing I really appreciate about the app. Because it's an aggregator of other people's, other sites' tickets, they can be honest about this is good or this is bad. You know what's always good?
What's that?
$20 off.
It is, but I'm going to say right now, I'm just going to jump in to have a very specific one. We've talked about this game before. It's good.
You've got a recommendation?
I've got a recommendation because it's a big game this weekend. If you are in the D.C. area and you want to attend a very, I'm going to say atmospheric game, the Montreal Impact are coming to Audi Field for DC United's game, Saturday, September 29th, 7 p.m. That game would be the Montreal Impact, the final playoff spot in the East. They occupy it.
Yep.
The team behind them, DC United. DC United
they want it.
I believe 2 games in hand, 5 points behind. So this is going to be a massive game. You can get tickets to this game on SeatGeek, and you can get them for $20 off.
All right. Well, if DC is successful, will they Piatti like it's 1999?
Yes.
So $20 off if you download the SeatGeek app and you go.
I would have given it to you if it was Thomas Partey. If Thomas Partey played for them, then we'd be talking.
If you go to the settings, enter promo code TSS, you'll get $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Puns sold separately.
Outstanding. SeatGeek, life's an event. We've got the tickets. Daryl, I've got another question for you, my friend. It comes from Justin Odom, who asks, 20 years from now, who will be regarded as the better U.S. manager, Jurgen Klinsmann or Steve Sampson?
Wow.
Yeah.
What a question.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Justin. So we've accidentally talked about Klinsmann at length, right? I didn't think we'd be doing that. I'm guessing some people will not know who Steve Sampson is. They probably
he's had a mini resurgence.
From American Fiasco, right? Which I still have not listened to, by the way. I fully intend to, just a busy man. So the 1998 World Cup, Steve Sampson was the coach. We went there. We finished last, right? But he also had the 95 Copa America where the US made the semis, beat Argentina along the way. He did have his moments, right? My answer is that in 20 years, the manager regarded as the better US manager will probably be Jurgen Klinsmann.
I agree.
Because at the World Cup, which is where most people pay attention, his World Cup team went to the round of 16. And despite what you said earlier about where things went wrong in 2018, it's going to be Bruce Arena that will be associated with the 2018 failure, right? And I think fairly so, right? Because he was in charge for most of the games. Klinsmann didn't help, but I think Arena's more responsible in the end.
I mean, if you're talking about the Hex, yes. In terms of overqualification, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, okay. But Arena's associated with it, whereas Klinsmann's not associated with the failure to qualify, and Sampson finished last at the World Cup.
I know this is...
It was a low point for American soccer.
I know this is kind of harsh, but I think it's more likely that Klinsmann will be the remembered of the two 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Steve Sampson will be remembered by, I don't know, you and me and folks who do soccer podcasts and folks who remember the 98 World Cup. But for people who don't, it's a World Cup where we didn't perform very well.
In fact, that is testament to how many new soccer fans there are in the United States, right? I mean, that's part of it. The soccer has picked up a lot of new fans through the US national team who have watched the 2010, the 2014 World Cup. Yeah, there are plenty of people who either weren't alive because a lot of, I think soccer fans skew younger, right? For that reason, or were not paying attention to soccer in 1998. Yeah. So for that reason, Klinsmann will be better remembered in 20 years. He's also just more famous.
Yeah, I mean that's a big part of it too. I do think that there's an argument to be made that if maybe, I mean, he's not going to. He's already said he just wants to, score goals and fish. But if Clint Dempsey came out and in his biography talked about how bad things were under Klinsmann, and Bradley did the same, and Josie did the same, and Pulisic, if he wrote a book and talked about how Jurgen Klinsmann, maybe then, if there's this weird sustained campaign of actually all of the problems were because of Jurgen Klinsmann,
right?
Then
but it would
maybe
need someone to hire a PR campaign to go after Jurgen Klinsmann.
Yeah, I think so. Because I would say that the biggest controversy of the
maybe that's what Thomas Schaefer's podcast is all about.
Yeah, I like it. But I would say the biggest controversy of the 2014 World Cup for the U.S. was his decision to leave Landon Donovan off the roster. Jurgen Klinsmann, right?
Yeah.
The biggest controversy of 1998 was what we know now involved Eric Winalda and John Harkes, right? That wasn't a situation made by Steve Sampson. The other one was a situation made by Jurgen Klinsmann.
Yes, that's true.
And so there are reasons to think, like, well, Steve Sampson kind of did get a bad hand on a couple of occasions. Jurgen Klinsmann, I don't know if he did, but I still think, to your point, you know, you get some silverware, you do well in a World Cup. Tottenham theoretically wanted you to manage them briefly. And I think it probably ends up being Jurgen Klinsmann as the sort of like, maybe you'll get a lot of, I feel like, retrospective articles in a few years about maybe if we'd stuck with him, things would have been different.
Yeah, or maybe if things do go well, right? If we live in some great imaginary future where like Carlton and Bello and these guys are tearing it up for the US national
The Dom Dwyer timeline where
team.
he scored against England.
No. I'm saying if this timeline gets an awful lot better really fast, I'll guarantee you'll see some articles that will be like, Klinsmann planted the seeds, gave Pulisic his debut and all that, and all that will bleed through. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Ready for the next question?
I am.
All right. How about you ask me? Because I keep asking the questions. It's a bad habit.
I asked you that one.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Well, excuse me.
I think I just got to talking.
Joseph Lowry, we know Joseph Lowry from The Athletic, wants to know, what specific tactical things would you like to see from the next US men's national team manager? I should say as well, you should follow Joseph Lowry on Twitter, at Joey Cleats. He produces some really good tactical analysis videos. I'm almost kind of nervous answering this question because of who's asking it.
Yeah, right? I do have a non-tactical answer that I want to include here, but I'm not going to do that first. I'm going to instead answer his question, and I think the best way I can explain this is I don't much care if we play a back three or a back four or a midfield three or midfield two, whatever. What I want to see more than anything is a team that balances itself. That you look at this team. Have you ever done this? Like, because I think I have. I've seen that team where like you go through and it's like, oh, those two center backs, they complement each other really well. Oh, those fullbacks, they know how to do this. Ooh, that midfielder combined with this midfielder, and they've got this number 10 who knows exactly how to play. And you can kind of see like, usually
all the pieces fit together.
Yeah, this striker would be stranded, but because this player knows exactly how to play underneath the number 9, they're like, oh, that's going to link up. And once you kind of see how that team is going to function, you can see it before it happens. And then it becomes this, I know this is like really out there, so I apologize.
Hey, let's go there.
But it becomes almost like a living organism of like, you can just see how like, oh, that person knows exactly how to fill in here and that person moves out there. And it becomes like the feet know exactly where to be. And just seeing a team that knows exactly where they need to be and how they need to play, that's like the best type of soccer you can watch. And that's what I would most like to see.
That will give me a lot of confidence and pleasure to watch a US national team that operates like that.
Yeah.
So I agree, but I want to drill down into some specifics about what that could be. No, but you had a non-tactical thing to talk about as well. Right?
Actually, well, the thing that I kept going back to is I do think what I've sort of started to realize is I think we're in a sort of new era for the U.S. national team. U.S. men's national team, that is. Not just in terms of like...
When did it start? Was it like October 2017?
Yeah. I know that sounds very obvious in retrospect. Let me explain. I think in the past, so many articles... talk about heart and energy, and U.S. was all about running and working really hard. And that was kind of what defined us. And then you can go into that whole conversation. But I think this team, or the talent pool we have now, is less about that. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I think that this is probably more...
My reaction is like to say, Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie have plenty heart and run.
They sure do. That's not what I'm... Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's not what I want to go down. I'm not trying to say like, oh, they don't run and therefore they don't represent... What I mean to say is that I think we have more technical players than we've ever had. I'm still not saying we're perfect, but I think we have more. And so I think it's incumbent upon the next manager to find a system that isn't just... everybody sit back, let's hope we have a good goalkeeper, and then we can counterattack.
Yeah.
We have the ability to play very good counterattacking soccer if you want to go that route, or high press systems. I think we could probably do some of that too. I think we have more talent. Even if we're at like a darkest point in U.S. soccer, I still think it's going to be the next manager has to find a way to bridge those different identities to make a more cohesive unit.
It sounds like you're talking about a U.S. team that takes better care of the ball.
Yes.
Right? Not necessarily like a Barcelona 2009, pass it around forever.
Exactly.
But fewer wasteful passes.
Yes,
exactly. Like more like possession that goes somewhere but doesn't get coughed up, right? Which is the ultimately tough balance to strike.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad thing to be worth striving for.
No.
Not a bad thing to be striving for at all. I'd gone for some... I'd drill down into some more specifics.
I appreciate that.
Right? So actually, this is going to work out nicely. This is why we're a good partnership, right? Because you've got the big picture stuff, and I am minutely detailed sometimes. I would like to see no more lone defensive midfielders.
Yep.
No more like Michael Bradley's the number 6. Will Trapper's the number 6. And then everything is on them to be running around trying to put out fires while everybody else does stuff. I am ready for some sort of system where it's either an actual midfield 3 that rotate or, a double pivot with like 2 people sitting in front of the defence. And as part of that, I think just because we've all been burned so much by it, I don't want to see a defensive midfielder who ends up going and sitting between 2 centre-backs to receive the ball, because that's always the most frustrating moments as a US fan, right?
May I ask you this, though?
Yeah.
First of all, yes, 100%. Second of all, just to clarify, when you say that like lone number 6, do you mean a person actually doing that number 6 spot? Because I know you are a massive admirer of Sergio Busquets.
Yeah.
Like if Sergio Busquets suddenly was like, oh, actually, I can play for the U.S. for some reason somehow. Like, I'm assuming you would want him to do that same role.
I think, but okay, I mean, this is
But he's not being a number 6 then, right?
This is a weird thought experiment, yeah, because if he played in the sort of deepest midfielder position for the US, he's going to end up doing a lot of defending, right? So it might end up that if you want to get the best out of Sergio Busquets on a US team, you might have to play him alongside someone who's willing to do the defensive
You're absolutely right. Never mind. I take it back.
So that he can get hold of the ball, which I think is sort of what I'm driving at. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I just did the thing of like, you can't just put a player in like that. Like, I was just criticizing Jurgen Klinsmann for doing exactly that, and then I just did it myself. So no, you're absolutely right. It wouldn't work.
I would agree that we'd be better off if we could get Sergio Busquets to play for the US, right?
It's a controversial opinion.
We need to invent the mid-career post-World Cup winning switch.
I think it should be fair. Yeah, so I'm with you then. Yeah, not one.
Along with that, right, along with not having that lone defensive midfielder come and sit between the centre-backs and the 3 of them pass the ball sideways for 20 minutes.
You get those passing stats up.
I want, and I think it's very possible that we will have a team where both centre-backs are very comfortable with the ball and are authorised, pre-cleared to play the ball out of the back and split defensive lines. I think Matt Miazga can do that. I think John Brooks can do that. I think they're both very, very capable of starting moves themselves.
Yeah.
Dribble forward a little bit, find a pass into midfield or beyond. Trust our centre-backs to pass the ball forward.
Yeah.
That's the thing I would like to see the next coach do.
All right. Do you have more tactical things?
I do. I've got a list here that I need to familiarise myself with.
I can say my other thing for a moment.
Let me get this one.
Okay, go ahead.
A sensible use of Christian Pulisic. I think this hints at my...
I got something like that.
Connects with my thing from earlier about not making him captain just because he's the most famous player.
Don't shove square players into round holes. That's what I got here. Yep.
Exactly that. And I think Pulisic's a good example of that. I think he could be used as a winger really successfully. He could even be used as like an underneath the second striker if he's allowed to roam around type player. I wouldn't mind seeing a sort of 3-5-2 or even 4-4-2 that's more like a 4-4-1-1 with Pulisic underneath a striker. I could handle that, but I don't want to see him have to play centre midfield.
Yeah,
because then he has too much defensive work back and forth in the middle of the park, and it's a whole different thing you're asking him to do.
Yeah, because there's a fine line, right? There's a fine line between, maybe he could actually try to play this position. Let's see if that fits. Oh, that didn't quite fit. Let's move him back to a position that works versus... maybe he's a central midfielder now because he's our best player. Like, if you're trying to move it around to find the best combination of an 11 you can, that makes total sense to me. But yeah, as soon as you're just like, he's the best, give him the ball. We don't. That's Will Ferrell's approach to coaching. We're not going that route.
The other thing I want to see is creative set pieces.
All right.
Do you remember there was a moment where sort of we had that weird Michael Bradley thing where he was sort of trying an Olympico from corner kicks all the time, but also we would stack people on the posts and it had a good chance of either going in because we'd cause trouble or landed on someone's head.
Do you remember the Josie, in the same era, do you remember the Josie Altidore stand like between the goalkeeper and the near post, but then run into the goal and peel around and come out of the back post for a wide open header? Those moments, yeah, I'm with you.
So I want to see not just like a couple of those things. I'd love us to have an arsenal of 10 of those things, right? Keep coming up with those plays, keep unleashing them on the world. I think they're pretty fun and effective.
Yeah. I agree. I like this. All right. Set pieces, living organisms.
Yeah. Weston McKennie long throws. Like maybe we make a weapon out of that as well. We've seen him doing it for Schalke.
Sure.
So, things like that. What were you going to say? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're good. Because mine was like less tactical and more just... I would like it to have to be, because I do think at the end of the day, part of being U.S. national team manager is being a politician. And I think a big part of that is if you call in for a friendly in Philly and you call in 18 international players as opposed to...
internationals in overseas.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Like 9 overseas and 9 MLS players. If you don't go that route, then there is that whole story about, he only wants to use non-domestic players, and isn't that a problem? And I do think sometimes you get players called in. I know every now and then you're going to have a player who's maybe on the outs who could use being put in the shop window. I get that. Yeah. But I think we've heard those stories about players maybe getting call-ups because it helps them get a better contract or gets them in a better status with their club. And the kind of political side to the call-ups, I know exists, but I'm going to choose to exist in a naive world where I would like it to not, because I would much rather...
Can I join you there? That's the world I want to live in.
Yeah, because I would much rather it just be, no, we're calling up our best left back because he is our best left back, and if our second best left back also happens to be playing in the Bundesliga, so be it. That's how it works.
I would also like... I'm on a roll now.
Okay.
I would also like to see a pressing system that we all agree on and we can really drill and become very effective at. And I think for the US, it's not going to be chasing the ball all the way up the field. It's going to be doing it around the halfway line, maybe just beyond. I think we sort of tried it against Brazil, right? And we didn't get it done. It was a little disjointed and it didn't quite work, right? Brazil exploited those spaces between players. We talked about that a lot on the review show. But I would really love us to be this... machine that wins the ball back in central midfield. And when I say pressing, again, I don't mean high up the field, like slide tackling the goalkeeper. I mean like an aggressive thing where you just can't go through the middle of the field because someone will bite your legs. Tyler Adams will get you. Weston McKennie will get you. Kelly Costa will get you. Someone will get you if you try to come through the middle, right?
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm down for that. Any other tactics?
I would like to... This is a more bigger picture thing. This is one of the reasons I was so pro Juan Carlos Osorio. I want to see patterns of play. I want to see a synchronization is what he called it. That thing where every time the US gets the ball, the plan is obviously we are going to play it into the feet of Josie Altidore and he's going to lay it off to Christian Pulisic. Yeah. And then Anthony Robinson is going to be making that third man run overlapping and Kelly Costa will be going the other side in case that's on. Like set patterns of play, almost like from an NFL playbook that I'd like to see the US execute.
My only hesitation with that is that once you have patterns of play, aren't they just easily learnable? So that teams they're doing that.
The best teams always do that with variations. Okay. Right? I mean, Mexico had a pattern of play under Osorio that they used against Germany, right? Yeah. And Germany saw it because they did it a few times, but eventually it paid off.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
But I'm going to go baby steps here, and I'm going to say a unified system of play that makes sense.
Yes.
There we go. That's what I want to see. That's my specific tactical request.
All right, but you can't blame me for dreaming.
I will not. I think I took us into the naive world of rainbows and lollipops and unicorns.
Hey, I'll go there.
All right. My wife says that's where my brain is already. So there we go. One for you, Daryl, comes from Jose Cordova. Ignoring any legal questions, do you think having an MLS team that only fielded American players, similar to Chivas and Liga MX, would be a good thing? Could such a team be competitive?
I'm so happy with where that question went, right? Because a question that starts ignoring any legal questions could go anywhere.
It could.
So, as I understand it, Jose's asking if we had a team in MLS that was only US eligible players, right? I think
would it be a good thing?
I think it would be a good thing. So I'd say yes, it would be a good thing because you're guaranteeing that Americans are getting minutes.
Sure.
No, they would not be that competitive because they would not be able to sign DPs like Giovinco or Miguel Almiron, right? They would be somewhat limited because they'd be placing constrictions on themselves in terms of talent.
Most hated team in Major League Soccer.
That's
what I have to say. Because if you have a team that's just Americans, you don't have that Chivas tradition. Like, I know we're not doing the legal aspect, but I will certainly go down the cultural aspect of it's not a good look. It's not a good look to be like we're only having Americans on this team in your face, everyone else.
I did not. Think of
that would be instantly like, oh, cool, you've got the xenophobe team. Perfect, great, have fun.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me think of this from the other angle, though.
Well, here's the way I've gotten around that is to say if you went with a U.S. national like all-star team where every season one of the teams in the league was composed of the best American players, then I think that's a different route. If it was like every year it's a different roster composed of the best players from like seasons past and abroad, if you could make that, then I think it's maybe not the worst idea.
All right. If we ignore all legal questions. And all nationalist angles. What about the idea that this could be everybody's Major League Soccer team if you don't have a team in your town, right? Because so many people, more people than not, support the US men's national team and don't have an MLS team in their city, right? There's just not enough to fill every city. So if you lived in Detroit, doesn't have an MLS team, your MLS team could be this weird US national team. Yeah.
It's possible.
And they could even have like a roaming stadium situation where they don't have one central location. They just roam around the country. So everybody can eventually see them play.
I feel like you've done a lot of work to not say Globetrotters is what you've done there.
America Trotters.
There we go. I mean, it's possible. But is that how teams work? Do people...
No, that's not how teams work. That's why we're ignoring all legal questions.
No, but I'm saying do people root for teams because they don't have any other options, so they go go with like the team of theoretical all-stars or whatever? Like, because I feel like people root for the individuals, right?
People are invested in the US men's national team, right? So therefore they would be invested in the Major League Soccer men's national team.
Yeah, that's possible. But I would say from a competition standpoint, that's where I say it might be a good thing. Because one of the things we've heard about from that, the many times we've talked about with the U.S. national team in 1994 was a big reason why they were able to perform the way they were is because they'd played so many games together.
Yes. That's why all those players have like 5 million caps, right?
Yes. It's a big part of it. It's because they're basically in residency.
Weren't they contracted to the U.S. national team? Like, Lalas didn't have a club, right, until Padova. I think he just played for the national team after college for all those years. Yeah. That's just one example.
And so they all got like tons and tons of experience together to learn how each other played. And if you play an entire season together, it's going to put you in a better position to play in a month-long tournament, certainly.
Yeah, so maybe this could work?
It's possible. I mean, I think you're still then... it comes down to player acquisition if you want to go the realistic route again.
They're not going to win MLS Cup.
No, and also if you have that policy of we're only hiring, like only going to sign Americans, then suddenly every American becomes way more expensive.
That is true, except there's not really transfer fees, right? It'd just be weird trades and allocation money that you'd be using to acquire these players.
Yeah, but the other teams automatically have the leverage there.
Like, you
need this player because he's the best and only American left back?
What if...
Money, please.
What if we granted this team homegrown rights across the country?
Oh, boy.
And they could just take... And this would be a place where all up-and-coming Americans could get minutes. Andrew Carlton could be starting every game for this team right now.
It's almost like there's like American like exceptionalism, I think is the word we would go with there.
That would be the name of the team.
The American Exceptionals?
Yeah, the American Exceptionals.
Perfect.
SC.
Yeah, I love it. Of course, SC. You didn't need to add that clarification.
All right, today's show is sponsored by another sponsor that's becoming a long-running sponsor.
Yep.
It's The Athletic. We mentioned Joseph Lowry writes for The Athletic, as well as writing for Twitter and other places. He wrote a good story for American Soccer Analysis Evolved as well. The Athletic is sponsoring today's Total Soccer Show. It is genuinely where all the best soccer writing is happening right now. It's where the majority of soccer writing is happening right now because they have a budget and they're paying soccer writers to put out soccer content all in the United States of America.
Speaking of the United States of America, that team we just mentioned, they might like some of the stuff that's being discussed at The Athletic because, say, Paul Tenorio's article about how the rumors that MLS might try to get rid of the third DP, I feel like the All-American team, maybe they're okay with that. Maybe they don't have to spend as much money.
Well, they said we're all DPs.
There we go.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into this story that you mentioned. Tenorio is sort of half reporting and half analysing the story that Major League Soccer is considering doing away with the third DP slot and maybe letting teams only spend like a TAM amount of money. As I understand it from Paul's article, this is a move from the less spendy Major League Soccer team owners. Right?
Yeah, I think so.
The Colorados and such that don't want to spend all the designated player money, they're sort of seeing the other teams like Atlanta and Toronto pull away from them in terms of spending, and they want to pull it back in.
Right. That's the frustrating aspect, and I think the thing that seems like makes Tenorio the most frustrated is that it's not just we don't want to spend that, it's that we don't want to spend that, so you shouldn't be allowed to spend that, so then we don't have to spend that. And he does make a very good analogy. I won't say what it is, so people can go read it for themselves, but it's very apt in terms of if you were told, like, no, you can't do this because I don't want to, it really is a ludicrous argument.
Yep, and I also know that just ideologically, Paul Tenorio is in favour of just more freedom for MLS teams to take more control of their own budget and spend their own money the way they want to. And that has been slowly but surely happening, right? This reins it back in a little bit. So it's like the tide is starting to turn, and not in the way we want it to.
Nope, certainly not. So I think that's a great article worth reading. You talked about this last time, but I finally read it with Steph Yang's article about the search for the women's GM.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that. I did get a little bit sidetracked reading about Hope Solo's candidacy for that position and her whole relationship to U.S. soccer, which has also been written about extensively at The Athletic.
Let's say I wouldn't put money on Hope Solo being the general manager of the U.S. women's national team.
Correct.
Yes. I also read Kevin Williams' article about Ernesto Valverde at Barcelona.
Yep.
Really, really interesting. It's one of those... First of all, I don't think I'd ever read anything by Kevin before. He's a really good writer. His words really kind of pop. And he talked a lot about Valverde's problem, which is he has a reduced Barcelona compared to Barcelona's in the past, and he's having to make tactical concessions to make sure they win games, but then he's getting blamed by fans for not playing the old Barcelona way, right? So he's kind of in a bind, poor Valverde. Right. But Kevin's story is a really good distillation and explanation of what's going on at Barcelona.
There we go. Yeah. So if you'd like to read that or any other stories at The Athletic, you could do so, and You can do so at a discount.
You can. The discount is, I'm sure you can remember.
TSS September?
No, I meant the amount, but yes.
40% off.
40% off if you go to theathletic.com/TSS September.
There we go. He's singing the jingle.
Yeah,
He's singing the jingle.
One day we'll do it. Next time we do it, we'll do it together. How about that? We'll see if we're in harmony.
I don't think people need to hear me sing.
We've got podcasting harmony. Maybe we'll see if we can get singing harmony.
That's not a you and me thing. That's a me being completely unable to sing thing.
Oh, that's a you and everyone thing.
Pretty much, yeah.
So theathletic.com/TSS September. The link will be in the show notes. We've heard from Twitter that your jingle has sold some subscriptions to The Athletic.
Yeah.
So thank you to everybody who's been signing up.
It's the greatest jingle ever. That's what I'll say. Complete humility there.
Don Draper keeps calling you up asking if he can use it.
Yeah, exactly. I have nothing to say to that other than I wanted to make some comment about his, is it Dick Whitman? Is that his other personality?
Yeah.
All right.
Spoilers for season 1
whatever.
of Mad Men.
All right, Daryl, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Zach Lippert, this seems like very much for you.
Oh,
what are
wow,
the chances
yes.
of a Gerard Lampard type situation with McKennie and Adams?
Ooh, okay. Do you think we need to give background on this?
I'll give you like 30 seconds. Go fast.
Oh, that's longer than I needed.
All right. I'll give you 10 seconds. Go fast.
There was a situation
1,
in the 2000s.
2, 3.
I think there's a cacophony happening there.
4. Okay, fine.
There's a situation in the 2000s where Gerrard and Lampard were the two great English central midfielders, and it seemed impossible. It turned out to be impossible to get them both in the national team and performing at their highest. They kind of didn't work well together.
That was like 14 seconds.
All right, so there's the Gerrard Lampard type situation. I think that's not going to happen with Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams.
I think the English are dumb. I'm just going to say that right there.
Because here's the reason. I think Gerrard was a central midfielder, but a midfielder who wanted to attack, right? Lampard was a central midfielder, but a midfielder who wanted to attack.
And you can only play the 2 midfielders.
Well,
if only you could play more than 2.
But even if you can play 3, yeah, there is that, right? Maybe
yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. It's like this wasn't a problem. All right, just put another midfielder in there.
Let's not. Well, the other midfielder might be like Paul Scholes, right? So suddenly you've got 3 attacking midfielders. But okay, just hear me out on this. It's then you've got 2 midfielders who want to attack, and they had this thing of like they kept talking about, okay, we'll just figure out the system where one stays and one goes, right? So if Lampard goes forward, Gerrard has to do the thing that doesn't come natural to him, because for Liverpool he's going to get forward every time, right? If Gerrard goes forward, then Lampard has to be the guy that stays home. That isn't the problem with McKennie and Adams because they're both two-way players. Right. They both love to get forward. They both love to come back. They both love to cover ground. You can have 2 players doing that. So they can operate together without the other one having to sacrifice something. That's why I don't think you're going to have a Gerard Lampard situation with McKennie and Adams.
I agree. And I would add, like, I know I was joking before, but again, we're not playing a 4-4-2. That's the other part of this, is that was very much if you have both of your central midfielders attacking, then suddenly you've got nobody filling that space.
Yeah.
I think you're always going to have another midfielder in there for the U.S. national team. That would be my guess, at least. And so that does also help balance things out a little bit, because if you have 2 players who are both like number 8s, essentially, they kind of know that role of maybe you get forward, maybe we both get forward, but we don't always get forward, and we also usually have cover.
Yeah, that makes sense. And they'll be doing that for other teams, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is that Gerrard and Lampard both were the dominant figure on their teams. They were the guys that like the other team would look for with the ball every time. And it's really hard when you have 2 guys trying to do that for a national team, right? McKennie and Adams don't have that problem either, right? They're both really influential for their teams, but they're not the sort of domineering figure who expect to do that for the national team.
There we go. All right. Asked and answered, Mr. Lippert.
But that was our most efficient one, right?
Yeah.
We didn't really hear from you. Did you just co-sign what I said?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Right.
Right.
I mean, my note was no, so we're good. Yeah.
With a nice retro critique of Sven and Steve McLaren and all those guys.
Stupid.
Next question is from Aaron Motes. Aaron wants to know, what are some of the new Major League Soccer, Liga MX or youth players you believe we get a look at in the January camp?
Sure.
Let's assume none of the possibilities transfer to Europe in the January window. So for those who don't know, the January camp is the time when the less experienced players are called up to the US men's national team. Are you reading my notes to see?
I'm wondering how many names you have, because I don't have that many, to be honest.
Okay. We'll cover it all between us.
Because I feel like it's going to be a strange one, because we expect it to be a new national team manager, which means I do think you're going to see maybe less experimentation than you might usually see. Because
so there might be like a Josie Altidore or Michael Bradley in the January camp. That would be my
guess, is that you might want to get as many players as you can in to kind of get everybody on board and do some evaluating.
Yeah.
I think you'll see...
That's probably what Jermaine Jones will do.
That's not funny. He was on my list of players who I was wondering, like, the way it always gets argued is, like, when it wasn't going to be Klinsmann, you had to have a temporary solution. it was always going to be Bradley or Arena. And I was just running through and I was like, but who could it have been? And I did have a moment where like, it could be Jermaine Jones.
I'll be honest, I have nothing to back this up. If you told me tomorrow Jermaine Jones is the new coach, I'd be like, yeah, let's do it.
I feel like he would have to get that same Pep Guardiola stay off of social media comments, because I do think he's constantly on Instagram. I don't know if he'd be coaching or Instagramming.
Maybe Instagram practice sessions and the tactics and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So maybe we have Coach Jermaine Jones.
I feel like I sidetracked us.
We did, a little bit. Because I'll say, so I think with that in mind, maybe you'll get some of those names that you and I have been talking about, or lots of folks have been talking about, like, say, Andrew Carlton and Reggie Cannon. Those are two who maybe I could see on that edge. But the one, sorry, you're making faces.
I was going to say, 100% Reggie Cannon. Reggie Cannon is the first name I wrote down, because he's the guy that has been on the edge of a call-up, it seems, for a little while. January camp makes absolute sense, right?
Okay.
He might be the next right back. Andrew Carlton, I kind of, in response to Aaron's question about youth players, I think a lot of those U20 players, and Andrew Carlton's going to be a U20 player, they're going to be busy in November or October with the U20 CONCACAF qualifying. And I think they're going to be sort of parked with the U20 team. So I don't think you're going to have many of those guys called up to January camp.
There we go. So with that also added, I think you will get more familiar faces, a few that maybe we're less familiar with, and one of those I do think will be Russell Canouse. That's one that I've definitely been hearing quite a bit about. We watched him play ourselves. I've enjoyed everything he's done for DC as more a defensive midfielder.
I want to say 15 minutes into, we saw DC play Philly. I remember you saying, Russell Canouse. It's almost like you saw him with fresh eyes, right?
Because and I think especially from where we were sitting, because we were sitting behind the goal, so you can sort of see the whole length of the field, obviously, but you can see his movement in cutting off passing lanes. But the way it felt like he was moving to put out fires before those fires were evident, that it was like, this person has drifted out of position, this person's too far forward, that player is open, so I'll step between these two. It felt like he was doing a very good job of reading the game on the fly and helping control the midfield as a result.
Here's how highly we both rate Russell Canouse, I believe. He's currently keeping Chris Durkin, who is from Richmond, and we've seen him play for the Kickers and play for the USU 17s and play for DC and been very excited. We're pro Chris Durkin, right? I'm okay with Chris Durkin not starting because the man keeping him out is Russell Canouse.
Yeah,
it's
and
okay.
it's playing well. Yeah. If it were Russell Canouse who's not playing that well, then things would be different.
So I'm with you that I think he's a good shout for a national team call-up. The other guy that I've been impressed with for a while now, he also played in that game, Austin Trusty. Austin Trusty, centre-back for Philadelphia Union. I'm almost 100% certain he's too old for any of the sort of U20 teams or anything like that. So Austin Trusty, I think, is a really great sort of new call-up for the US men's national team and would deserve it based on the form he's shown this season.
What about Liga MX? Do you have any in there? Because
I don't, actually.
I think that's because, if we're both being honest, we have paid less attention to it since Jonathan Gonzalez. And so I can't say that I've been watching nearly as much of it. I've watched highlights here and there, bits and pieces here and there. I enjoyed the Campeones Cup. I didn't. I'm kidding. But I really can't say the new faces that I know coming out of that league who could play for the US.
I guess Alejandro Guido, right, was the one guy that I believe played. I can't remember which friendly he played in there. Maybe the Bolivia,
or at least was called in
game. So that's a possibility. I know it's tougher with Liga MX anyway because their season starts earlier, right? The season will start earlier than MLS does, so a lot of those players have to go back towards the end of camp anyway. Austin Trusty, by the way, I feel like fits into that Matt Miazga, John Brooks, capable of playing the ball out of the back type system. So I almost feel like he should be a little bit fast-tracked to the senior team.
Yeah.
I got one more for you.
What you got?
Brooks Lennon.
Okay.
Brooks Lennon has been doing it at right back for Real Salt Lake. He was in the last January camp. Remember there was quite a few guys that were called up but then were sent home before the actual game? So 1 year later, maybe the progression is called up and actually get to stick around and play in the game.
All right.
So my two right backs, Brooks Lennon and Reggie Cannon. Yeah.
Perfect. I like it. Final question then comes from Chris McGuffin.
Sorry, there's some I completely forgot that were really important.
I was wondering.
I'm really sorry.
That list looked longer from where I was sitting.
Yes, Scandinavia. Scandinavia. So they take a 10-week break in Denmark, which means we could get a first call-up for Jonathan Amon. Jonathan Amon, the FC Nordsjælland winger, who looks really exciting.
Romain Gall as well, right?
Romain Gall is in Sweden. Their season is over mid-November. And maybe even Emmanuel Sabi also in Sweden. No. So, Jonathan Amon, Romain Gall, and Emmanuel Sabi are players I would love to see called up in January.
I like it.
Nearly forgot.
How could you? How could you? All right. We good?
Yes.
All right. Final question. Chris McGuffin. One of the things that people criticized U.S. soccer for following last October was the lack of media scrutiny and coverage towards the U.S. men's national team. What are some improvements you think could be made from both the federation and the media to help solve this?
It's a good question, right? It's kind of two questions, right? So maybe should we start with the media?
Can I ask a question about the question, actually?
Yeah, a meta question.
Do you agree with him?
Do I agree that people criticize U.S. soccer?
There's a lack of media scrutiny and coverage towards the U.S. men's national team.
I think there is a lack of scrutiny in terms of what are we doing, what are the tactics, why wasn't this guy selected? And I also think...
That is my answer, by the way.
Yeah,
so
that's the thing that the media could do, right? Not like... How disappointed are you with the result, Coach? I think it should be, what was the tactical plan tonight? How come this guy had so much space down this wing? Why was this guy, Michael Bradley, left so isolated? I think it's on the US media, both the senior guys that are in the room and asking questions at the press conference, pre-match and post-match. And I mean, in an ideal world, also the stories that run in like USA Today, you know what I mean, should be asking questions specifically about what is happening on the field. I would also, because I'm trying to hold other people accountable, maybe hold us accountable. I feel like in that World Cup run-up, we were in the end, I think, too positive about like the draw away to Panama, or I can't remember what we said after the tie away to Honduras that followed the Costa Rica home defeat. But I remember us a lot of the time being like, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. A draw on the road in CONCACAF is good. I think maybe for us, like me and you in the Total Soccer Show, we could raise the bar a little bit and expect more of the US men's national team.
Yeah, I think there's always like, when it comes to us, my guess would be that I was a little more pessimistic than you were, and you were a little bit more like, yeah, but it's what you have to do. And I do think that sometimes it's easy to go down that route of like, we don't want to be reactionary, we don't want to be the ones screaming the sky is falling, and then the next game when they win 4-0, it's like, oh, okay, the sky's not falling anymore. So I think there's always that awareness that if you are wrong publicly, or even if you're right publicly in that game, there's a chance that then when you're right, later on you're wrong. Because so I think there is that, I don't want to have that gotcha moment 6 months from now when it's like, you loved Bruce Arena and now he's the worst. We got that a lot. And I don't think we ever loved Bruce Arena, but I think that does...
I did around the time of the Gold Cup win, right? That's why I choose the Costa Rica moment as my turning point.
I don't think I ever loved Bruce Arena recently. But yes, so I think that maybe is part of it, is less... like fear of the way your coverage is going to be perceived and the reaction to it. I do think that colors things. But I think to your point, the biggest one for me is like the approach to tactics as well, but maybe a little bit different, is that it's not about holding the coach like accountable for like, why did you do this? Why did that happen? But it's more about how do we, I mean, I would even say we, because we don't have that big of a megaphone or whatever, but like, how often do we see
we have earphones.
Yeah, true. But like, and I'm not trying to let us off the hook. I'm just trying to say that like, we don't have the platform in the pregame to be able to sit around for half an hour and explain what we think they might do, what we think the other team would do.
I can't believe I didn't say TV. I was thinking of the media asking questions in the press conference. TV is the biggest medium where you could have a tactical explanation of what's going on with the US national team.
And the reason why that's important, it's not just so people know like, oh, we're not really playing a 4-2-3-1. We're actually playing like, fine, that's great. What I mean is that if you don't have an idea what's going to happen or what is happening before the game, you have no idea what happens after. And then it lends itself to, well, we should just be winning that game. It's just not good enough. Maybe it's the crowd. Maybe it's the fans. Yeah. Why can't we get 100% of fans in there? And it's just like, who cares? Why aren't we winning? Like, and that's the thing, is I wish more of the coverage were about, why is he trying this? Why is this player playing as a left winger instead of a right winger?
Do you mean why as a rhetorical question, like you're angry with it, or why as in I actually want to know the reasons?
I want to know the reasons. Yeah, I want to know
the non-rhetorical why, which is the best why.
What's the gamble in this game? I want to know what, like, and I think this is like to bring it full circle back to like, say you are playing Kellen Costa as a right back all of a sudden, or we play Tyler Adams as a right back. I want the commentators or the analysts to tell me, okay, he's taking a gamble here. He's starting Tyler Adams at right back. Now that might mean he like doesn't think DeAndre Edlin's doing a good enough job. It might mean that he wants to see if this player can compete there going forward. Maybe he's going to be the focal point of the attacks. Like, all of that stuff is useful information because it informs you, the viewer, as you watch the game, but it also tells you what the coach is doing, how he's trying to evolve, what systems and tactics are being put in place, and it gives you a frame of reference for down the road.
Okay. I would say also...
Rant mostly over.
To Chris's question about scrutiny, right? Was scrutiny the word he used?
Yeah.
It's never going to be the same intensity here, at least not in the short or medium term, as it is in Italy or France or England, where it's a national obsession, or Holland. The Netherlands would be the ideal thing, right? Where everybody's talking about tactics, it seems. Everybody gets a chalkboard when they graduate high school. Yeah.
That's how it works. It's actually, they don't get the big hats. They just get a chalkboard on top of the hat, and you use that to draw your tactics.
You can pre-fill the
Don't throw that up in the air. They're very heavy.
But I think that's never going to be the case in the US, right? Like the majority of people in the US, I know we live in a little bubble, but the majority of people in the US don't want scrutiny of the US national team because they want to read about something else, right? Some other sport that they're interested in. So it's got to be almost within our small community that we give intelligent scrutiny.
I don't think I agree with you, because I think if you're watching the US, if you're watching a sport, like, what's a sport you don't know very much about? Would you say you know very little about
any sport?
NASCAR. You don't know much about NASCAR, right?
No.
If you watch NASCAR,
it's the driving one, right?
There you go. But you're not going to just, like, if you, Daryl, are going to sit down and watch a NASCAR event, I have a feeling that maybe at first you'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's cars going around a track. But then I think, as with most things, if you had somebody explain to you, well, actually, this person is doing this so their teammate can get this advantage, or they're drafting so they can get a little bit faster, so around this turn, like, that stuff would appeal to you, and it would make you more interested in what's happening in a thing that you otherwise have zero interest in. And I think if you don't treat people like dummies and you explain what's going on and why people are doing stuff, it makes people more informed than just, oh, the white team isn't winning and now I'm annoyed.
Yeah.
That's my feeling on it.
I agree with you on all that.
Yeah.
But I think the thing I was talking about when we talk about scrutiny is like national pressure. As in, there wasn't like a national pressure. It's not as if, let's say,
okay, I got
Graham Zusi couldn't go out in public.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because there isn't that level of scrutiny, which in the end may be a good thing.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I don't need people being mad about tattoos. We don't need that type of scrutiny. I don't think so.
Another question, does Nas drive in the NASCAR?
He does. He does. It's not North American stock. It's the rapper, Nas, yes.
That's what I thought. Just wanted that confirmed.
But I would say on the other side of this, I think that one thing I would like to see is more transparency from U.S. Soccer, but maybe
because Chris asked about the federation, right? Yeah,
but in a non-obvious way. And I think a lot of times, we went to the coaches convention. I mean, there's a panel truck outside that has that advertisement where it's like Sunu Galati dancing as a puppet and Cordero and Kathy Carter too. Like, there are reasons for U.S. Soccer to not want to talk to the media. There are reasons for them to be frustrated with the coverage they do get. And so I think a lot of times when there is, sometimes maybe the skin could be a little bit thicker, but I think also there's that idea that we don't know a lot about what happens in U.S. soccer, and so if you just start throwing stones, you kind of don't know what's already been in consideration. And maybe if we did an hour-and-a-half long podcast about how it's ludicrous that we don't have a coach yet, and Ernie Stewart's just sitting around doing nothing, and then in reality he's flying everywhere, he's talked to 500 people, he's actually interviewed a bunch of people.
He's just worked a 20-hour day or something.
Yeah, then he's going to be annoyed, and he is not going to value the coverage because he's going to say, well, you guys have no idea what you're talking about, you're just speculating, and you're being negative. Because why? And I think that if...
I'm not thinking of anything specifically, but I'll guarantee that take is out there somewhere.
Yeah, certainly. And I just think that it goes both ways, though, that if we had a better idea of the work that was... I don't even want to stick with Ernie Stewart, but just generally speaking, the work that goes into organizing a conference or organizing a friendly. Why are we playing it here versus here? If we had a better idea...
Negotiating with club teams to get call-ups for players.
Yeah, like I would love to know more about how that stuff works, because then we know how that stuff works. And it's less of this weird, was it Soccer United marketing? Was it this? Was it that? Did they have a vested interest in it being here, not here? But like... People, again, I think people want the honest answer and not necessarily the most exciting answer, but they want to know what's going on.
So you and I have talked about this off air, right? I think our essential belief, or your belief that I now agree with, is that if US soccer was more transparent, the perception of them would be more generous.
I think so.
Yeah.
But I think that works...
As opposed to just waiting for people to criticize them and then put the shutters down.
Yeah.
But do the purge thing.
That's a big old leap of faith, though. And it has to work both ways, that it has to be more nuanced coverage and less Sunu Galati hates pro-rel and is the devil. Why would he want to come on your podcast if that's your approach? Why would he want to talk to you? And that is part of it. Is I think that there's not as much trust in independent media and blogs and websites and podcasts and whatever.
I will say they've been okay with us.
Yeah, right? They've been. I mean, they've been fine with us, but it's just more that like I think people see that. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like the lack of enthusiasm about, yeah, sure, we'll have this person. I mean, we couldn't get Carlos Cordero on our podcast, for example. We tried. No answer. And I think that I
Which should have been the tell that he was going to be elected president.
Yep, really should have. And it's kind of why we really wanted him on the show.
Everyone else was available, but Carlos Cordero wasn't.
We had a feeling that that's maybe the way it was going to go. But I think that like I was frustrated by that. But at the same time, like there has to be a reason for a person to come on your show. There has to be a reason for you to earn the, I would say, privilege to get certain people in U.S. soccer or players or what have you to come on and talk about what they're doing and to do so in an open and honest fashion.
All right. I like it. This is like a manifesto.
A little bit.
Are you starting a new show without me?
It's a cult, actually. It's the cult of honest coverage and neutral, non-hyperbolic reactions.
Yeah. Oh, why is Thomas Shavitz calling you?
It's not a very fancy name for that one. I don't want this to be misconstrued as me saying like they're doing everything right and we should just listen to them. No, it's not that.
It's more like we don't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
So then it's easy to assume bad intent.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, there is more we could talk about on this, but I think we've gone about an hour and we have many, many, many more questions to get to. That's going to have to be in part 2,
all right,
which we will publish tomorrow.
I got 20 more minutes on this real fast. If you don't mind.
I'm in if you're in.
You want to hear me talk more about how the president of U.S. Soccer and a reporter should be allowed to sit at a bar and just have a casual conversation?
I mean, let's do it. All right. Thank you to everybody who sent us questions. We already have our next batch of U.S. national team questions lined up. If you've got any other questions for us or U.S. questions for future shows, we can do a U.S. women's national team one as well. Please send them to totalsoccershow.com/questions. Totalsoccershow.com/questions, and there's a form you can fill out. If you're a $10 a month or more subscriber, we guarantee to answer a question per month, but we also make sure that we are not only answering $10 per month questions. Basically, we love answering questions.
We do.
So, Taylor Rockwell and your little green book, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
I say right back at you, buddy, the little green book feels like it's being mocked and doesn't appreciate.
I'm more condescended to. Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.